You're not allowed in here. The sharp voice rang out as Javier, a Mexican pizza delivery guy, was blocked at the iron gate late at night. Sweat trickled down his temple, not from the heat, but from the message he'd just received from the same number that placed the order. Help me. Don't leave. I'm bleeding. Please don't tell anyone. The message arrived just as the Halcyon Heights security guard slammed the gate shut in Javier's face. No one ordered pizza here. The guard barked. You can turn around now. But Javier knew something was wrong. The order was placed from 88 Windmere Drive, and something about the house didn't sit right. He looked up. The second floor window glowed faintly. A hand hit the glass. Bloody. The sound of sirens was a common lullaby in Southside Charlotte. On most nights, Javier Hernandez barely noticed them. But tonight, as he rolled down the metal shutter of Lorenzo's Pizza and tied his delivery bag shut, he found himself glancing at the blinking lights bouncing off the convenience store across the street. A minor scuffle, maybe. A DUI. Something routine. Southside wasn't the worst neighborhood in Charlotte, but it wasn't winning any beauty contests either. The houses stood tired under sagging porches and rusted mailboxes, the chain-link fences bent at odd angles like old men with crooked spines. People made do. They worked hard, took care of their families, and kept their heads down. So did Javier. At 23, he was already a veteran of keeping quiet. He'd learned young that speaking up too much, especially with the wrong accent, the wrong skin tone, could get you into trouble, especially in this city. Javier was the son of undocumented immigrants from Jalisco, Mexico. His mother, Lucia, still woke at 4 every morning to take 2 buses to the cleaning job downtown. His father, Ramiro, had been taken away in an ice raid when Javier was just 13. The memory of that morning, Ramiro being pressed against the living room floor while Javier clutched his school backpack and screamed, still clung to his bones like wet clothing. Since then, it had just been him and Mama, and whatever odd jobs he could find. Last one of the night, mijo, Lorenzo called from the back as he handed over the steaming pizza box. Easy one. Rich neighborhood. Big tip. Javier took the printed order slip and glanced at the address, 88 Windmere Drive. His brows lifted. Windmere? That was in Halcyon Heights, the gated enclave of mini mansions and security guards, a place where gardeners weren't allowed to park their trucks in driveways, where no one answered the door unless you buzzed and were buzzed in. You sure they even want us there? Javier asked, folding the slip and sliding it into the pouch of his bag. Lorenzo shrugged. App shows a $40 tip, and it says hand deliver. Do not ring bell. Kinda weird, but hey, $40 is $40. Javier hesitated. Miguel, the shop's older delivery guy, was stacking pizza boxes nearby. He paused and gave Javier a side glance. Be careful with that one, Miguel said. I used to deliver in Halcyon years ago. People there think if you're brown and on their street, you're either cleaning their pool or stealing their packages. Javier chuckled softly, but the words stayed with him as he walked out to his beat-up Honda Civic, the pizza box warming his lap for a moment before he placed it on the passenger seat. He double-checked the GPS. 23 minutes to Windmere. Mostly highways, then winding residential roads lined with sycamore trees and automatic sprinklers. He pulled out of the parking lot, the neon sign of Lorenzo's glowing behind him like a distant memory. The music on his radio played low, some local station spinning a blend of indie pop and Spanish ballads. He tapped the steering wheel in rhythm, trying not to think too hard about the address. But his mind wandered anyway. He thought about his classes at the community college, criminology, of all things. He had always been interested in how systems worked, how laws were bent and broken, and how people justified the damage they did. He didn't say it out loud, but deep down, he wanted to be a detective someday. Maybe even an agent. Someone who understood the rules, who could help people like his father had once needed help. But people like him didn't get those kinds of jobs. Not usually. Especially not with a resume full of pizza deliveries and lawn mowing. As the Civic curved through the final stretch of road leading into Halcyon Heights, the neighborhood shifted like a curtain being pulled back on another world. The cracked pavement smoothed into polished asphalt. Gas lamps lined the sidewalks like ornaments. And the homes, if you could call them that, loomed behind iron gates and carefully curated hedges, each one grander than the last. He pulled up to the gatehouse and rolled down his window. A large security guard with a buzz cut and sunglasses, even at night, stepped out of the booth and approached. "Delivery for number 88, Javier said, holding up his phone with the app's screen glowing. The man didn't look. Instead, he peered at Javier with the same expression people used when their dog dragged in something muddy. "There's no delivery scheduled for that residence," the guard said flatly. Javier blinked. "But the order came in through the app. Look, Windmere Drive, Unit 88. I even have the notes here. No one called in, no access code. Turn around." Javier sighed and shifted the car into reverse, but before he could back away, his phone buzzed. A new message, from the same number that had placed the order. "Help me. Don't leave. I'm bleeding. Please don't tell anyone." He stared at it, his heart knocked once. Hard. He looked up toward the mansion behind the gate. The upstairs window flickered. Then, a hand. Blood. Javier parked his Civic a block away, under the shadow of a flickering street lamp. The pizza bag sat beside him on the seat, its warmth now an afterthought. His phone was still lit with the message, "Help me. Don't leave. I'm bleeding. Please don't tell anyone." His thumb hovered above the call button. 911 was the obvious choice, but something in the message, in its frantic restraint, told him that wouldn't be enough. Whoever sent it didn't trust the police, and that changed everything. He slid the phone into his pocket and stepped out into the night. The walls around Halcyon Heights weren't impossible to breach. He'd seen it before on delivery runs. Teenagers sneaking in to meet secret girlfriends, landscapers hopping fences to retrieve forgotten tools. But he'd never imagined he'd be doing it himself, with a bleeding stranger on the other side. The west side of the compound, as Miguel had once casually mentioned, had a stretch of old stonework without barbed wire or cameras. "Only the rich think money's enough protection," he remembered him saying. Javier found it, partially hidden behind a row of ornamental holly trees. The stones were rough and uneven, just enough to find grip. He glanced around. No headlights, no motion sensors. Then, with a running start, he launched himself upward. His foot slipped once near the top, scraping his shin, but adrenaline shoved him over. He landed hard on the other side, rolling awkwardly onto trimmed grass. Silence. He crouched low. Towering in front of him was the mansion at 88 Windmere. 4 stories of white limestone, arches, columns, windows like cathedral eyes staring down at him. But not one curtain moved. Not a single sound from inside. Except from somewhere upstairs, a light flickered again. Javier clutched the pizza bag like a shield and began creeping toward the house. The back of the mansion was flanked by a marble patio and a glass-paneled sunroom. Expensive patio furniture lay draped in sheets. The sliding glass door was slightly ajar. His pulse quickened. He hadn't imagined it. Someone had opened it. He stepped inside. The air shifted immediately. Cooler, heavier. There was a faint coppery smell in the room, and beneath it, the sharp tang of antiseptic. The tiles under his feet clicked faintly with each step. A shattered wine glass glinted under a chair. And then he saw it, a dark smear of blood on the wall. Fresh. "Hello?" he whispered. "Is anyone here?" No answer. He took another step. The blood trail led toward the hallway. The carpet there was cream-colored and soaked dark red in spots. It curved up the staircase, disappearing toward the upper floor. He hesitated, his body torn between instincts, fight, flight, or freeze. But then he heard it, a groan, weak, human, from upstairs. Javier swallowed and climbed. Each creaking step sounded like a gunshot in the silence. The smell of blood grew stronger. The walls bore family photos, children in private school uniforms, a smiling couple at a gala, a man in a military dress uniform with medals across his chest. And then, at the end of the hallway, a door stood slightly open. Warm light bled through the crack. He pushed it open. A man lay on the floor beside a king-sized bed. He was in his 40s, pale and sweating, with a blood-soaked shirt clinging to his torso. His face was drawn, lips gray, but he was alive. Barely. "Help," he rasped. "Please, did they send you?" Javier dropped to his knees beside him. "No, I'm the delivery guy. You sent the message?" The man gave a weak nod. "Hale, Jacob Hale. I didn't know what else to do." "Who did this to you?" "People I trusted," Hale said, closing his eyes for a moment. "I exposed something. They tried to silence me." Javier looked around the room. There was no phone, no computer. It looked staged, sterile, like a hideout, or a prison. "I need to get you to a hospital." "Sure to..." "No." Hale coughed, and his body shuddered. They've infiltrated the system. If I go to a hospital, they'll finish the job. You have to get me out. Take me somewhere safe." Javier's hands were trembling. "I can't. I'm not." "You don't have to understand," Hale murmured. "Just don't leave me here." Javier hesitated. And then outside, he saw something that made his blood freeze. Through the slats of the curtain, headlights flared, two beams piercing the darkness. A black SUV had just pulled up to the front gate. Javier's breath caught in his throat. The SUV outside didn't move for a long second. Its engine purred like a sleeping predator. Then, doors opened. Two shadows emerged, silhouettes cast against the sleek headlights. One of them carried something metallic, long, rigid. A weapon? Javier's instincts screamed. He bolted to the bedroom door and locked it with a quiet click. Then he rushed back to Hale, who was fading fast, his skin clammy, eyelids drooping. "You need to stay awake," Javier said firmly, pulling the throw blanket off the bed and pressing it tighter against the man's midsection. "Hey, look at me." Hale blinked sluggishly, then whispered, "They're here, aren't they?" "Yeah. So how do we get out of here? Back door?" "No good," Hale murmured. "The place only has one working exit, designed that way. Panic House. Used to be a safe house for high-value witnesses." He coughed, and blood flecked his lips. Javier's heart pounded. "Is there another way out? A tunnel? A garage?" "Basement," Hale said, struggling to focus. "Concealed hatch under the rug in the pantry. It leads to a side alley behind the wall. They don't know about it." Javier stood, ready to move, when the door handle behind him jiggled. Not hard, not loud, but deliberate. Someone was testing it. They knew he was in there. Javier looked around frantically. The only weapons in sight were a decorative vase and a lamp. Useless. "Okay," he said quickly. "We're getting out? Can you walk?" Hale shook his head faintly. "You'll have to drag me?" Javier grabbed the man under his arms and heaved. His muscles screamed. Hale was taller, heavier than he looked. They stumbled toward the hallway. From downstairs, the front door creaked open. Javier half dragged, half carried Hale across the landing, every step like pulling against time. He avoided the stairs and instead moved toward the service hallway that led to the kitchen. Behind them, a voice called out, "Jacob, you up there?" It wasn't angry, it wasn't panicked, it was calm, polished. That terrified Javier more. He turned the corner into the darkened kitchen and quickly shut the swinging door behind him. Hale groaned in pain but didn't cry out. The pantry was just off the kitchen, one of those oversized walk-in types lined with imported spices and backup supplies. Javier pushed through the door, flicked on his phone's flashlight, and began sweeping the floor. Rugs, boxes, stacked cans. Then he found it. A large rectangular area rug, slightly misaligned with the tiled floor. He tore it away to reveal a steel hatch with a fingerprint scanner. His stomach dropped. "You said this was a safe house. How do I open it?" Hale reached into his bloodied pants pocket and pulled out a small black card. "Override keycard," he muttered. "Tap the corner of the scanner." Javier did. A soft beep. The hatch clicked open. A metallic ladder led into darkness. "I go first," Javier said, voice tight. "Then I'll help you down." Hale didn't argue. Javier descended into the cool, musty tunnel, then looked up and reached for Hale. It took everything he had to lower him carefully, groaning with effort, sweat pouring down his face. Above them, footsteps entered the kitchen. They didn't speak. Javier slid the hatch closed, and the tunnel fell into blackness, lit only by his flashlight. The space was narrow, just wide enough for one person, and the floor was concrete, damp, cold. He half-dragged Hale down the path, guided by rusted pipes and faintly glowing markers on the wall. "How far does this go?" Javier whispered. "About 2 blocks, Hale breathed. "Comes out behind an abandoned property. Used to be a hideout, now forgotten." Perfect. Minutes stretched like hours. At one point, they heard a thud from above, a hatch slamming shut, a voice shouting in anger. But it grew distant. By the time they reached the rusted exit door, Javier's arms felt like lead. He shoved it open with his shoulder and stumbled into the alley. The city looked different out here. Quiet, anonymous. Just buildings and garbage bins and the hum of distant traffic. Safe, for now. They found refuge inside an old auto garage. The owner, a wiry black man in his 60s named Reggie, had once known Hale through an operation overseas. He didn't ask questions, just helped Javier lay Hale down on a workbench turned makeshift cot and handed over a first aid kit. As Reggie stitched Hale's side, Javier stood back, finally letting the night's weight settle on him. "You saved his life," Reggie said, not looking up. I was just delivering pizza. That's how most stories start, kid. But now you're in it. Jacob Hale awoke coughing. The dim garage light overhead flickered as if it, too, were unsure whether to stay on or give out. A single oscillating fan hummed in the corner, pushing around the stale scent of oil, rust, and blood. Outside, the morning light was beginning to seep through the cracks of the boarded-up windows. Javier leaned against a workbench, arms folded, eyes fixed on the man who had turned his night upside down. You said you exposed something, Javier said quietly. Tell me what happened. Tell me why they want you dead. Hale blinked, as if adjusting not just to the light, but to being alive. His breathing was shallow but improving. He looked around slowly. You got me out? Yeah, Javier replied. You were bleeding to death. You also gave me a heart attack. So, you owe me a real explanation. Hale chuckled once, then winced as the stitches in his side stretched. That's fair. Reggie, their quiet host and medic, emerged from a side room with a battered thermos and 2 cups of coffee. He handed one to Javier, the other to Hale. I'm only letting you hide here because I owe your sorry butt from Montenegro, Reggie said gruffly. You die on my table. I'll never hear the end of it. Good to see you too, Reg, Hale murmured. Javier waited, sipping his coffee slowly. He didn't know who Hale truly was, but he knew enough to recognize this wasn't a simple mistake or accident. This was something big. Finally, Hale spoke. I used to work for a task force under the DOJ, joint operations between Homeland Security, the FBI, and a few alphabet groups we don't even officially acknowledge, he said. Our job was to identify and disrupt financial channels connected to terrorism, espionage, and organized crime. Javier nodded slowly. Okay. About 10 months ago, I was investigating a suspected shell company tied to cartel money laundering. Seemed routine at first, but the deeper I dug, the stranger it got. Offshore accounts, fake charities, donations to political campaigns. But what tipped me off, he leaned forward, was a link to private military contractors. Javier tensed. Like Blackwater? Similar. This group's newer, smaller, and more selective. They're not just ex-military. They're ex-intelligence, ex-interrogation units, cybersecurity wizards. They offer services outside legal limits, and their biggest clients? Politicians, defense lobbyists, even a few judges. Reggie whistled softly. Hale continued. I found encrypted transfers between them and 3 sitting U.S. senators. Millions. Some of the money was routed through emergency pandemic relief programs. Others were funneled through veteran support foundations that only existed on paper. And you reported it? Javier asked. I tried. I took it to my superior. He nodded, told me we'd handle it carefully. The next morning, my badge didn't work. My apartment was cleared out. My email history was gone. 2 hours later, I was picked up by a team I didn't recognize and drugged. Javier's stomach tightened. I woke up in that mansion. Someone must have miscalculated the dosage. I was supposed to die of a stroke or self-inflicted wound, something neat and easy. But I held on. Barely. Why did they let you keep your phone? They didn't know I had it. It was surgically implanted into my prosthetic hip after an operation overseas. Encrypted signal piggybacked off delivery apps. I knew it was a long shot, but I sent a ping out anyway. And I was the guy who got the order, Javier said with a half-shocked, half-ironic smile. Best damn pepperoni pizza I ever didn't eat, Hale said. Reggie broke the silence. So what now, soldier? I have a flash drive, Hale said. It's hidden, encrypted with multi-phase biometric locks. Inside are financial records, emails, recordings, proof. But I need access to a system that won't flag my presence. Can't you just upload it anonymously? Javier asked. They'd trace the route within minutes. I need someone inside, someone clean. Reggie scratched his beard. I know a girl, Channel 4, investigative reporter. She's been chasing ghosts for years. Maybe time we gave her a real one. Javier sat up straighter. Wait, Sasha Riley? Hale raised a brow. You know her? Only from TV, Javier said. She's legit. Doesn't flinch when things get ugly. Then that's where I go, Hale said firmly. But I can't walk in there with a gunshot wound and a manhunt on my back. No, Javier said slowly. But maybe I can. Hale and Reggie exchanged a look. You're not trained for this, Hale said. Javier looked back at him. Neither was I last night. Javier held the flash drive between his fingers like it was a lit match. Small, matte black, No label, no markings. Just an anonymous shape that could blow a hole through a carefully hidden system of corruption and take down anyone who held it. This thing could destroy careers, Reggie muttered, arms folded as he leaned against the tool bench. Or get you killed. I'm aware, Javier replied. He could feel Jacob Hale's eyes on him from across the garage, where the injured man sat wrapped in an old army jacket, sipping weak coffee like it was morphine. The gray in Hale's beard showed more clearly now under the natural light spilling through a narrow window. His eyes, though dulled by fatigue, had the sharpness of a man used to war zones. And this was a war zone, just in khakis and tailored suits. You're sure Sasha Riley can be trusted? Javier asked, slipping the flash drive into the zippered coin pouch of his wallet. She's been chasing these stories for years, Hale said. She's the only one who hasn't been bought or silenced. She even investigated her own news director once. Reggie snorted. Yeah, and barely kept her job because of it. All I need is 5 minutes of her time, Javier said. If I can convince her this is real, she'll do the rest. Hale nodded. You'll have to be careful. They know someone helped me escape. If they identify you, they'll be watching. Javier checked his phone. Still off. No GPS, no data. I'll take side streets, leave the car, walk a few blocks before I get there. You still have your delivery bag? Hale asked. Javier smirked. Of course. 10 minutes later, Javier stepped out of the garage dressed in the same pizza uniform he wore the night before. Red polo, black cap, delivery bag slung over his shoulder. To anyone watching, he looked like just another tired guy trying to beat traffic and cold cheese. The only difference was the carefully folded press pass copy in his pocket. Printed from Channel 4's website, a fake delivery slip Reggie had mocked up, and a hand-drawn smile rehearsed in the mirror. Channel 4 wasn't far. 12 blocks, maybe 15 minutes on foot if you avoided the main roads. He left the car behind, just as he planned. Too easy to track, too easy to follow. The sun was fully up now, spilling gold between the glass towers and brick buildings of downtown Charlotte. Cars honked. A woman jogged by with earbuds in. The city moved like it didn't know it was sitting on top of a time bomb. At the corner of 5th and Tryon, Javier ducked into a coffee shop and used their restroom to wash his face, clean the sweat from his neck, and reapply his delivery guy smile. He looked at himself in the mirror. Just another day, he whispered. You've done harder things. But he hadn't. Not really. He stepped outside and resumed walking. The Channel 4 building rose ahead like a glass and steel monolith. Not huge, but prominent. 3 stories tall with a rotating news ticker crawling across its face and 2 satellite dishes on the roof. A security guard stood by the entrance, distracted by his phone. Javier walked past him confidently, half pushing open the front door and stepping into the lobby like he belonged. Reception was a small desk staffed by a woman in her 30s with bright pink glasses and a half-empty Starbucks cup. She looked up briefly. Delivery? She asked. Yeah. For Sasha Rayleigh, she ordered something from Benny's Pizza, Javier said, tapping the label on his insulated bag. The woman frowned. She doesn't usually get deliveries. Maybe someone else sent it? Look, I'm just supposed to hand it to her directly. Says so on the ticket. He handed over the fake receipt. She studied it, shrugged. All right, 3rd floor, press room, end of the hallway. You can take the elevator. Thanks. Javier kept walking, resisting the urge to sprint. He pressed the elevator button and waited, heart pounding so loudly it drowned out the ding of the doors. Inside, he caught a brief glimpse of himself in the mirrored wall. Sweat had returned. Too late to back out now. The 3rd floor was busy with people tapping keyboards, answering phones, and editing footage, voices layered over each other like static. On a monitor nearby, a segment was playing about a local teacher raising funds for underprivileged students. Javier spotted her immediately. Sasha Riley. She was standing beside a whiteboard, arms crossed, sharp eyes narrowed as she listened to a junior producer speak. She was in her early 40s, dressed in dark jeans and a navy blazer, with a ponytail that gave her the air of someone who didn't have time for nonsense. Javier waited until she was alone, then approached. Miss Riley? He said quietly. She turned. Yeah? I need to give you something urgent. It's about Jacob Hale. Her expression changed instantly, from curiosity to controlled alertness. You need to leave, she said under her breath. No, listen. He's alive. He's hurt, but safe. He gave me this. Javier slipped the flash drive from his pocket, shielding it with his hand. Her eyes flicked to the device, then to his face. Follow me, now. She led him down a hallway to a small editing suite, soundproof, door locked, lights off except for the glow of the monitors. She turned. Talk. He was being held in a mansion. He was stabbed. They tried to kill him. He escaped. I helped him. She stared at him. You're just a delivery guy. Yeah, he said, holding her gaze. But I didn't walk away. Sasha took the flash drive, inserted it into a secure laptop, and opened an encrypted shell. Within seconds, her screen lit up with documents, account numbers, routing codes, internal memos, even voice recordings. She paled. My God, she whispered. Javier said nothing. He didn't need to. How long before they trace this back to you? Sasha asked, eyes locked on the screen. Javier swallowed hard. Probably already working on it. The editing suite pulsed with quiet urgency. The screen in front of them was flooded with data, spreadsheets, offshore routing logs, audio files of backroom conversations, encrypted memos with initials of senators and corporate heads. Some of it bore official government headers. Others were casually damning, like an email from a defense contractor executive joking about paying to keep patriotism profitable. Sasha sat still for a long moment, her face unreadable. Then she pushed back from the desk and stood. We go live. Today. Javier blinked. What? We don't sit on this. No time to fact-check every detail. If we let this simmer for even a few hours, it gives them time to scrub, discredit, even bury us. This, she motioned toward the screen, needs oxygen. Real, national coverage. Won't your network stop you? I won't give them the chance. I have a broadcast slot in 37 minutes. We use it. Sasha moved with practiced speed, pulling a burner laptop from her locker and transferring critical files. Then she opened a drawer, pulled out a flip phone, and dialed a number from memory. Mike, it's Sasha. We're preempting the noon slot. I've got something that can't wait. No, not a local story. Bigger. Global. She clicked the phone shut before he could finish his response. Pack up, she said. You're coming with me. Me? You're the witness. The guy who got him out. People need to see you, need to hear it straight. It makes this real. Javier hesitated. His heart was already beating in double time. He wasn't trained for this. He hadn't rehearsed soundbites or media protocols. He wasn't a whistleblower or an insider. He was a pizza guy who saw someone bleeding and didn't turn away. But maybe that's why it had to be him. All right, he said, voice steady. Let's do it. The Channel 4 broadcast studio was a whirlwind of motion. Sasha led Javier through side halls, bypassing the main newsroom. Camera operators adjusted their rigs. A floor director barked orders into a headset. The backdrop behind the anchor desk glowed with blues and silvers, framing the polished facade of truth. Sasha's producer, a wiry man with graying hair and a shirt that read, "No comment is still a comment," met them near the control room. You're seriously airing this? Without a vet? Send it to legal if you want, Sasha said. But I'm running it either way. He looked like he wanted to argue but didn't. You've got 5 minutes live. No warning to the affiliates. 5 is all I need. Javier was handed a water bottle, mic'd up, and ushered to a stool beside the anchor desk. It all felt surreal. Just 12 hours ago, he was sliding pizza boxes onto plastic tables. Now he was about to speak into a camera that could be broadcasting nationwide within minutes. The countdown clock began flashing red above them. Live in 4:59, 4:58. She sat beside him, already composed, flipping through a stack of papers and cue cards she wouldn't even glance at. You okay? She asked. Javier nodded slowly. As okay as someone who just broke into a mansion, rescued a federal agent, and is now about to call out half the government on live TV. She smiled. That's the spirit. The lights came up. The teleprompter blinked, and then, on air. Sasha turned to the camera with the ease of someone who had stared down hurricanes, CEOs, and political blowback without blinking. Good afternoon, I'm Sasha Riley, and today we're interrupting our regularly scheduled programming for a breaking, unfiltered report. What you are about to hear may be shocking. It may be dangerous, but it is true. She turned to Javier. Joining me now is Javier Hernandez, a Charlotte resident who less than 12 hours ago delivered a pizza and uncovered a federal whistleblower left for dead. Javier, thank you for being here. Javier cleared his throat, hands clasped tightly in his lap. Thank you for letting me speak. And then He told his story. Not with drama, not with flourish, but with raw truth, the order, the bleeding man upstairs, the voice in the dark, the escape, the flash drive. He didn't exaggerate. He didn't guess. He simply said what happened, and every word landed with weight. When he finished, Sasha turned back to the camera. What you've just heard isn't speculation. It's not internet rumor. It's the beginning of something much larger. We are currently reviewing encrypted materials handed over this morning. Files which include communications, financial records, and audio evidence implicating sitting lawmakers and private defense contractors in one of the most coordinated fraud networks we've ever encountered. The camera held for 5 more seconds. Then, cut. Back in the editing bay, Sasha pulled Javier aside. You just went public? That changes everything. Javier nodded, still dazed. Can I go home now? She stared at him, hard. Do you think they're going to let you go home after this? He blinked. What do you mean? She lowered her voice. You're not just a witness anymore. You're the face of the leak. They'll paint you as a liar. Or worse, you need protection. Protection from who? She didn't answer. She didn't need to. Javier didn't notice the man watching him from across the street. The broadcast had ended just 20 minutes earlier. Inside the Channel 4 building, the newsroom was ablaze with activity. Phones ringing nonstop, emails flooding in from whistleblowers, lawyers, and government officials demanding answers. Sasha was already in a closed-door meeting with station executives. But Javier? He just wanted to breathe, to feel the sun on his face, to believe, even briefly, that he'd made it out. He stepped outside through the side exit, hoodie pulled over his pizza uniform, hoping to blend into the mid-afternoon crowd gathering around the nearby food trucks. He walked fast, kept his head down. A block away, he slipped into an alley between a coffee shop and a law office, then looped behind a used bookstore before heading south toward the garage. That's when he saw the reflection. A black SUV, parked across from the station entrance. Same model he'd seen outside Hale's mansion. Tinted windows, no plates. His pulse spiked. He turned a corner, tried to act natural, but his footsteps quickened. He was being followed. Javier's first instinct was to call Hale, but his phone was still off. They'd agreed it was safer that way. No digital trail, no GPS, which meant he had no way to warn Reggie, no way to tell Hale what he'd just seen, no way to call for help without giving himself away. He ducked into a barber shop, slipped through the back door, and emerged 2 alleys away. He crouched behind a dumpster, waited a full minute, then peeked around the corner. No sign of the SUV, but he couldn't shake the feeling he was still being watched. He pressed forward. By the time Javier reached the auto garage, his nerves were frayed and his legs ached from zigzagging through alleys and side streets. The building looked the same. Rusted sign, boarded up windows, the faint smell of oil and exhaust. He tapped on the rear door 3 times in a rhythmic pattern Reggie had taught him. A moment later, the door opened. You took the scenic route? Reggie asked, raising an eyebrow. I think I was followed, Javier panted. A black SUV was parked near the station, no plates. Hale, now sitting up on a rolling stool with a bandage on his side and a .45 caliber pistol in his lap, looked up sharply. They've already found us? Maybe, Javier said. I doubled back 3 times. I don't think they saw me come in. Reggie locked the door behind him. Doesn't matter. If they know who you are, they'll find you eventually. These guys don't use warrants. They don't use badges. Just bullets. Hale rubbed his temples. We've got 1 shot left. He motioned for Javier to sit, then opened a worn leather satchel by his feet. Inside was a second flash drive, silver, heavier, attached to a chain. This is the full package, Hale said. What you gave Sasha was enough to ignite the fire. But this is the explosion. Names, contracts, surveillance footage, even logs from encrypted call records between senators and mercenary groups. Javier stared at the drive. You kept this hidden the whole time? Wasn't sure who'd make it out alive, Hale said. Didn't want all the evidence in one place. Reggie leaned in. So what do we do? Drop it at the FBI's front desk? Upload it to Reddit? No, Hale said grimly. We go international. He pulled out a battered notebook and flipped to a hand-drawn map. At the center was a single name, Anders Kroll. He's an investigative journalist based in Sweden, won't fold to pressure, already has a network ready to receive files and verify them. If this drive reaches him, they'll have no way to kill the story. It'll be global in an hour. How do we reach him? Javier asked. Via a dead drop in DC, a contact of mine, Mara Lynn, will pick it up. She's got diplomatic protection. That's our best chance. Javier blinked. DC? That's over 300 miles away. Reggie exhaled. So we're going on a road trip. He won't be, Reggie said. We'll find a new safe house for him. The van slowed. Reggie leaned out the window, scouting the terrain. Next intersection. Switch cars. There's a stash car under the overpass up ahead. You'll take it. How do you know? I built it. For days like this. 10 minutes later, they pulled under an old concrete bridge surrounded by rusting fencing and knee-high weeds. Reggie stepped out first, popped open a padlocked gate behind a drainage tunnel, and wheeled out a dusty sedan, unmarked, dull gray, dented in 2 places. Perfectly forgettable. Full tank, clean plates. Glove box has a burner phone, basic cash, and a map. Javier stared at it like it was a coffin. You're seriously okay with doing this? He asked. Reggie shrugged. I was never going to retire in peace, kid. At least now I go out doing something right. He slapped Javier's shoulder once, firm but not rushed. Then he turned and limped back toward the van. By the time Reggie pulled away with their pursuers still unknowingly behind him, Javier was alone again, with the flash drive in his pocket, a burner phone, and an impossible mission ahead. The sedan rode differently, lower to the ground, less control, but it was mobile, and it was quiet. Javier followed the map Reggie had marked with red X's, rural back roads, unmonitored gas stations, one motel in case of emergency. He didn't stop, didn't eat, didn't speak, didn't breathe properly until 3 hours later when the sun began to rise behind a curtain of fog. By 7:12 a.m., Javier rolled into a small town outside Richmond, Virginia. He pulled into a trucker diner and parked beside a semi. Inside, he sat by the window with a mug of bitter coffee and watched the street. Still alone, he dialed the burner. 2 rings. Then, you made it? It was Sasha. Almost, Javier said. Reggie drew them off. Hale's still safe. I've got the drive. Where's the drop? Sasha paused. My contact just arrived in D.C. Name's Mara Lynn, Chinese diplomatic security, tall, black coat, short hair. You'll meet her at the west side of Union Station. 11 a.m. sharp. Don't be early. Don't be late. Got it. Javier, once you hand it over, disappear. Change your name. Change your life. He hung up without answering. The last leg of the trip was the hardest. D.C. wasn't just a city. It was a chessboard, and every piece was watching. Traffic crawled. Police cars were everywhere. The Capitol dome loomed like a giant eye. He parked 4 blocks from Union Station and approached on foot, blending with tourists and commuters. At exactly 10:59 a.m., he stood under the shadow of the terminal's Romanesque arches. And at 11 a.m. sharp, she arrived. Mara Lynn. Every inch of her screamed control. Her stride, her stance, the way she scanned the crowd before even looking at him. You're the courier? She asked. He nodded and slipped the flash drive into her hand like they were exchanging train tickets. I've got extraction ready, she said. You can come with me. But Javier shook his head. I'm not done. Javier hadn't slept in over 30 hours, but his mind was sharper than ever. He moved through Washington, D.C. like a ghost, hood up, steps purposeful, eyes scanning every reflection and shadow. He had already delivered the flash drive to Mara Lynn. Technically, his part in this was over. The proof was on its way to secure international hands. Sasha had told him to vanish, to rebuild a life somewhere far from this city of facades and secrets. But Javier couldn't. Not yet. He didn't just want to leak the truth. He wanted to confront it. He made his way toward Capitol Hill with a burner phone, a duffel bag, and the digital remnants of Hale's hidden cache, copies of incriminating files still tucked inside an encrypted folder Reggie had sent to his secondary device just before they split. This one's yours now, Reggie had said, in case the world needs one last fire starter. Now, walking beneath the marble columns of government, Javier understood what he had to do. He wasn't here to protest. He wasn't here to plead. He was going to speak, loud and clear, to every hallway that ignored him, to every lawmaker who had written people like him off as invisible. Inside the Capitol complex, reporters were gathering for a midday press conference. The rotunda buzzed with energy, cameras being mounted, microphones checked. A senator was scheduled to address the media about an ongoing misinformation campaign tied to fabricated leaks. Javier smirked. They were already trying to spin it, exactly what Hale had warned. But Javier had no intention of staying quiet. He walked straight into the media crowd, blending in with interns and assistants. No one noticed him, just another face with a press badge printed from a copier. He had found a window, one that wouldn't stay open long. 10 minutes before the scheduled conference, Javier slipped away from the rotunda and entered a side hallway leading to the press IT room. It was empty. 2 government-issued terminals sat on desks with monitors still logged in. He plugged in the flash drive copy and launched the automated tool Hale had built. It uploaded instantly. Encrypted evidence, files, audio, video. It didn't just go to news outlets. It went to a dozen global servers, whistleblower sites, public forums. He didn't stop there. He tapped into the media pool's internal projector system, the one that would be used during the senators' conference, and queued one file to play automatically the moment the camera feeds went live. A video, grainy but clear, of a U.S. senator speaking into a phone, his words sharp, unmistakable. Double the payment. I want Hale erased, and anyone who touches that file disappears with him. Javier stepped back. He didn't need to say anything. The truth would speak for itself. He exited the room and walked toward the rotunda once more. Cameras were rolling. Reporters were seated. The senator approached the podium, clearing his throat. But before he could speak, the projector behind him flickered to life. Gasps filled the air. Screens showed financial ledgers, black site transfers, satellite images, and then the video. Double the payment. I want Hale erased. The senator froze. Reporters stood, shouted questions. Security moved. But it was too late. The world had already seen. Javier slipped out through a maintenance exit and walked briskly down an alley between 2 government buildings. Sirens echoed in the distance. Not for him, not yet. Maybe not at all. But just as he rounded a corner, he froze. A tall man in a dark jacket stood there. Not law enforcement, no badge, but unmistakably trained. The man reached into his coat. Javier turned to run. Crack! A flash. Then pain exploded in his shoulder. He dropped to his knees, gasping. Footsteps approached. You made too much noise, the man said flatly. But before he could finish his sentence, bang! Another shot. Not from the man's gun. The agent jerked backward, fell, dead before he hit the pavement. Javier looked up through blurred vision. A shadow emerged. It was Hale. One arm bandaged, the other holding a smoking pistol. You're supposed to be resting, Javier gasped, hand pressed to his bleeding shoulder. You were supposed to disappear, Hale grunted. Guess neither of us is good at following instructions. Reggie appeared behind him, driving a nondescript black sedan. Get in, he shouted. They hauled Javier into the back seat, tires screeching as the car peeled away. They crossed the Maryland border just after midnight, the taillights of Reggie's sedan fading into the fog that clung to the 2-lane back roads like a ghost refusing to let go. In the back seat, Javier drifted in and out of consciousness, his left shoulder bandaged tight with gauze soaked in blood. Hale sat beside him, looking more ghost than man, the painkillers barely dulling the fire that still raged beneath his ribs. Reggie didn't speak much, eyes fixed on the road, jaw clenched. He drove like a man who knew there wasn't going to be a round 2. They stopped at a cabin Reggie used to own years ago, remote, no utilities, off every map that mattered. By the time the car engine fell silent, news of the Capitol video had already broken across every major network on the planet. The world was awake and angry. Inside the cabin, Reggie lit a single oil lamp and collapsed into a weathered armchair. Hale helped Javier to a cot against the far wall, his movements slow but steady. You're gonna live, Hale said softly. Javier managed a weak smirk. You sound disappointed, Hale chuckled, wincing. You saved me, twice. I figured the least I could do is return the favor. Javier looked up at him through pain-glazed eyes. It worked, didn't it? The video, the leak, people saw. Hale nodded. And it's not just the video. Sasha followed up with documents, evidence. Thousands of pages are in the hands of investigators, foreign outlets, even the United Nations. We forced it into the light. Reggie poured water into a cracked mug and handed it to Javier. You're not just a pizza guy anymore, kid. I don't want to be a hero, Javier whispered. Good, Hale said. Heroes die fast. Survivors keep fighting. By dawn, the world had changed. 3 U.S. senators resigned within hours of the video release. A 4th one tried to flee the country and was intercepted at the Canadian border. Defense contractors issued panicked statements. The Department of Justice launched a sweeping investigation, and international watchdogs descended on Washington like hawks. But it wasn't over. The power structures didn't just crumble overnight. They regrouped, rebranded. The men behind the curtain, the ones with offshore accounts, proxy companies, and mercenaries on speed dial, they weren't all caught. Some simply went silent, waiting. And Hale knew they'd come back, which meant Javier couldn't stay. 3 days later, a courier knocked on the cabin door. No uniform, no ID, just a briefcase and a quiet nod exchanged with Hale. Inside the case were 4 items: a new passport bearing the name Daniel Rivera, a plane ticket to Lisbon, Portugal, a debit card linked to a secure account on there, and a handwritten note from Sasha Riley. You didn't just deliver a pizza, you delivered the truth. Now go live a life worth protecting. Javier held the passport in his lap, staring at the photo. It looked like him, almost, but the name felt foreign on his tongue. I don't know how to be someone else, he admitted. Hale leaned forward. You don't have to be someone else. Just don't let them erase who you were. They left the cabin in the early morning fog. No goodbyes, no speeches, just the quiet understanding between survivors. Javier boarded the plane alone, blending in with tourists and business travelers, his arms still stiff from the wound. No one gave him a second glance. No one knew that tucked in his wallet was a scar from a bullet meant to silence a movement and a flash drive that started a revolution. He landed in Lisbon 12 hours later. He rented a small apartment above a cafe run by a retired fisherman and his wife. He told them he was a writer. They didn't ask many questions, just served him strong coffee and warm bread each morning. For weeks, he stayed quiet, read, walked the city, waited. One morning, he opened his laptop to find a message waiting for him in a secure inbox he didn't remember setting up. Subject: Phase 2, from unknown. They're regrouping. We have names, coordinates, footage. Ready when you are, Rivera. Javier stared at it for a long time. Then he closed the laptop, finished his coffee, and stepped onto the balcony. The sky above Lisbon was endless and blue. And somewhere, someone was watching, waiting, and soon he'd be ready. Not as a pizza guy, not as a fugitive, but as something new, something permanent.